Hello and welcome. It is time for I Didn't Sign Up for This. Carrie, what are we talking about?
Hey, Tim. So I was driving home today and I kept seeing a sign that stood out to me, and that was the detour sign. And I have to say that I want to talk about the detours that life presents to us. I think that there are so many times where we have a plan and all of a sudden we find ourselves on a detour away from our plan and really kind of talk through how do we get back to our plan or do we?
Okay, excellent. Because, oftentimes I think we don't. I mean, sometimes we do, obviously, but sometimes we don't. Sometimes a plan can be disrupted in a way that going back is not really a possibility.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, I'm a planner. I like to plan ahead and, I make a list of things that I need to accomplish and I check off the list, and that's somewhat satisfying for me, but I know that not all people are like that. And I think one of the hardest lessons for me to learn a couple of points in my life is when your list doesn't quite fit anymore and you have to get away from it and move in a different direction for whatever reason. I know one of the biggest detours for me in life was the fact that I grew up in a very religious household. And with that, everybody got married really young. And so my plan was to check those boxes and get married at a certain age and have kids at a certain age. And it didn't quite happen that way. And I remember a couple of times in my 20s, and I look back now and like my early 20s, I had no idea what I wanted out of life, but I thought I had this plan because it was almost expected of me. And I hit a time where I watched a lot of my friends recycle through relationships. And so they would get married and they would start having kids, and then something would happen and they'd get a divorce, and all of a sudden they're getting married to, husband number two or wife number two. And I'm just living my life and going with the plan that I've recreated for myself because of that detour. And I got to a point where I said, man, I am so lucky. And not that everybody's journey is different. So it's not really a comparative at all, but it was just an opportunity for me to go, man, I'm so glad this worked out the way that it did for me. And so that's the point that I think we need to talk about, is that sometimes the plan that you create and the detours away from that plan are actually the bigger plan in the grand scheme of things.
Right, okay. Because, I mean, as you well know, I like the biggest detour of my life was probably Bo, who's my little Down syndrome boy, because nobody really expects that sort of thing. I mean, I can remember the night when we had gone to the hospital, had this baby, and here now the baby's out, and cute little, crumpled up toad. And I go home that night. Everybody's tired. Everybody's exhausted. The pediatrician comes over like late at night, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I guess he'd had a really busy day. And so at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, I had already gone home, getting the other child, my oldest, ready for bed, that sort of thing. And I get this call saying, you got to come back over here. The doctor needs to tell us something about the baby. And I'm like, okay, that's got to happen now? Like, yes, yeah, apparently it's got to happen right now. And so, I'm thinking the worst, right? I'm thinking the absolute worst. And I remember tearing over to the hospital, absolutely terrified that something major was wrong. I remember when I was on the phone with his mom, and I said, okay, but he's okay. Like, he's alive. He's breathing, right? He's okay. yeah, he's okay. He's breathing in and out, heart's beating, everything's fine. But the doctor wants to tell us something about the situation, and he's got to do that in person, apparently. And so I went driving back over, got there, up to the room, took about 10 minutes. Doctor comes in, we think your baby's probably Down syndrome. And honestly, that part of it was not even a surprise for me, because I had had premonitions that I would have this little Down syndrome child. More voodoo, I know, but nonetheless, for the preceding probably 7 or 8 years, I had had ideas, visions, dreams, whatever you want to call them, all of the above, relative to this child coming into my life. And so when he did, in fact, come into my life, it was not some huge surprise. Now, I'm not trying to sound like Captain Good here or anything. I mean, it was difficult. It was very challenging because I had certain ideas about what that experience would be in terms of being a father, right? I had one child, a little girl, and now I was having a little boy. And like many fathers do, I painted pictures of baseball games and sailboats and camping trips and all kinds of things. And so it was, in fact, challenging. For the first few months, for the first little while there, while this reality, this major, major detour in my life was settling in and taking hold on my psyche, on my conscious and subconscious. I mean, this is a completely different road than you ever think you're going to travel. And so for the first few months there, I was just kind of breathing in and out, going through the motions, you know?
Well, I just have seen so many people in their lives that go through the motions until it's time to retire, and then they get home and they don't get up and go through the motions anymore. And so at, 65 or 70 years old, they're looking at their lives going, what the hell did I do? And I don't want that. I don't want that for myself. I don't want that for anybody, because I want people to feel and to grow and to believe that they deserve the best possible life that they can have. And if that means staying in a corporate environment, or that means, moving to an island and selling tacos on the beach, whatever makes you happy, because we all have a plan. We all go into life having a plan, and we all deviate from that plan. So how do you get back on track and pursue what you want to do? Or do you? And there are no mistakes. It's just like you said in the previous podcast. There are no mistakes. Everything happens for a reason. How many people truly can embrace that in the moment? Probably not a lot.
Well, and the secret to that is, even though there are a lot of people who would scoff at that, there are a lot of people who will say, hey, that's just a bunch of that spiritual, religious, mumbo jumbo BS, right? Well, sure, everything happens for a reason, and whatever, right? But the part of that they're overlooking is the mental health and the well-being, the happiness and the capacity to push on that affords someone who adopts the ideology. The person who is the critic, the person who will scoff at it, the person who'll just say, hey, man, there's no meaning to life. There's no magic in the world. There's no directive or drive. There's no intelligence in the design of any of this stuff that's going on. And they might make a really valid point from a skeptic's perspective, right? Mm-hmm. I can't necessarily overcome all of the logical assaults that come with that perspective. And I don't even try, because at the end of the day, I am, and most people are, far happier, even if we're just these dim-witted idiots who believe in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and voodoo and religion and spirituality or whatever. Those people as a group are far happier than the people who don't embrace an ideology that tells them everything that happens for a reason. And so if you can go out and just embrace an ideology that says, hey, this is God's will, or the universe is giving me, or I don't know, the spaghetti monster thinks I should be doing, whatever, and sincerely, honestly, from the depths of your soul, believe it, you are dramatically happier. You now have vision. You're not just a great big cosmic mistake. You have vision and purpose and a reason to be alive. And if you'll embrace that, your life gets so much better.
I believe that. It comes along with faith. And when you have faith, you have more freedom, because they go hand in hand. Your expectations limit you. And I know that we've talked a little bit about expectations, but I've seen so many people put a plan in place. And like I said, my disclaimer, I am absolutely a planner. But I have seen people put a plan in place and then they allow that to define them because they leverage everything they have on the expectation of what that plan looks like. So all of a sudden, they're not them anymore, they're their plan. And when it doesn't happen and it doesn't work out, they're just devastated.
Right.
And you have to let go. There are times in life where you have to let go of your plan and allow for the experience to happen. And whatever source that experience comes from, if you can get through it and get to the other side, you will see the benefit and the payoff of what that is. I remember in my early 20s, I ran away to Argentina. And I say that because my dad had passed away and my family picked up and moved from South Carolina to another state, and I had the opportunity to go live in South America. And the trip aligned to be 2 days before Christmas. And I had a plan that I was just going to I was going to have the best experience and the people were going to love me and I was going to embrace the culture and it was going to be awesome. And I also had the expectation that I knew a little bit of Spanish.
Right.
And I remember that I got down there 2 days before Christmas and I was paired up with someone from down there. And about 10 minutes into the conversation with her, I realized that she spoke no English and I spoke no Spanish.
Everybody thinks they speak Spanish until they go, right? You get there.
Yep. And I don't know what they thought they were teaching me when they prepped me for this event in my life.
It turns out it was not Spanish.
I was 100% convinced that they taught me the wrong language. And I got down there and it was hot. And so here I am, leaving from Utah.
Oh, yeah, because it's summertime. It's summer down there.
Yep. And I don't know if you've ever been to northern Argentina or any of our listeners have ever been to northern Argentina, but it's hell on earth in the summer.
Right.
I mean, I can live in Arizona and it's not as bad as what it was in the conditions that I lived in. So here I am in Argentina, gung-ho, ready to go. 2 days before Christmas, it's hot. I'm used to the cold weather. I speak no Spanish. No one around me speaks English. And it's Christmas. And I call my mom on Christmas. And not to mention our apartment. If you can visualize this, our apartment was about the size of what an average guest bedroom would be in a new house. The entire apartment. The shower came out of the wall. There was a drain in the floor. But the shower came out and hit right above the sink. And so here I am with this feisty South American woman who takes a sledgehammer and breaks the sink off the wall so that we can shower.
Oh my God.
So now we have no sink. We literally have a small refrigerator and we have a 2-burner camping stove. And this is my life. And I thought, what the hell have I gotten myself into? Christmas Day, I go to, they had these phone places. So we take a taxi to this phone place. I'm covered in mosquito bites because, boy, they like some girls from Utah down in northern Argentina.
Oh, I bet.
I am head to toe covered in mosquito bites. And I called my mom, and I have never been a quitter. But in that moment, I told my mom, I said, if I didn't have so many people believing that I could do this, I would turn around and come home.
Right.
Because I hate it here. The people are loud. I can't speak the language. They don't understand me. I can't communicate with anyone. When I tell you that there was no one in the town that I was in that spoke English, I'm not kidding. Like, there literally was nobody to communicate with. And, my mom gave me words of encouragement. And of course I was going to keep going because quitting wasn't an option. Now, fast forward over a year later, when it's time for me to come home, I cried just as hard because I had to leave this country that I'd grown to love, and these people that I had grown to care so much about, and the experience and the evolution and the freedom that it gave me and the person that I became,
Right.
that it was more devastating for me to board a flight to come back home than it ever was sitting in a strange place on Christmas Day talking to my mom months prior.
Right.
So I had a plan, and I will tell you that in that plan, it was never to hate it. But sometimes life deals us, scenarios and situations that we have to work through, and they don't go according to plan. But if you will allow yourself the opportunity to remove the expectations and go for the experience, you always come out a better person on the other side.
Right. I believe that.
Always.
I believe that. Well, because it was this whole notion of, what is happiness and what is misery and sadness and what is elation and worry. And all of those things you can sort of throw into one basket together, believe it or not. Because if you are incredibly excited about some future event, that's just as bad as morosely dreading some future event. It's the same thing, believe it or not, because we only exist in the moment we're in, right? That's the dirty little trick here. And, we can only really be happy in the moment that we're in. We can project happiness into the future and hope we attain it, just like we can project worry into the future and hope we don't attain it. We can reminisce about past happy times and sort of bask in the glow of that past happiness. At the same time, we could bask in the glow of the misery that life used to be. I can't imagine it's actually glowing, but I don't know how that looks to most people, right?
Well, you never know.
I just love to bask in the glow of how miserable I was. Yeah, well, I'm not sure it's glowing. But do you see what I'm saying? It's like you are happy in the moment that you're in, and almost anything else you do. That's not to say you shouldn't plan or that you shouldn't remember, because it's fun to remember and it's absolutely necessary to plan. But you've got to get focused on where you are while you are actually there. And if you can do that, then there's peace. Then there's happiness. Because I'm a big believer in the notion that the natural state of man is happiness. We're just happy, left to our own devices.
Oh, I agree with that. And, I think that it does boil down to releasing expectation. There are so many times that we project how we expect things to go. And I can tell you from a woman's perspective that anytime my friends or anytime I've been in a relationship, or there have been moments of anger or irritation, every single time, and I can't speak for all women, but I am one, and I do know a lot of women. Every time there's discontent in a relationship that they're in, it's because they are holding to an expectation that wasn't realized by their partner.
Okay, yeah.
And that's detrimental to your relationship. And so you have to let go of that. And I agree with you. Living in the moment and living right now is all we have. You still have to look forward to the future and what you want to do, and start right now with the steps that you need to take. And then as you progress, you're going into the now in every progression, and then it becomes your reality.
Right.
But going back to happiness, let's talk a little bit more about happiness. If I'm not happy in the moment right now, and I'm not happy with what I'm doing, what can I do to change that now? Because I have some ideas, but I want your thought on it.
Well, you have to understand, I come at it from a perspective of the notion that there are precious few times where you are not happy in the now.
Explain that.
Well, I remember having a conversation with someone here, and this has been a few years back now, but this is a business person. Business person was really, really struggling over whether or not to shut down what was apparently a failing business. Okay, the business was just not doing well, and the phone conversation got to be quite intimate, quite personal, quite heated. There was, a lot of snot and tears and the whole bit, right? Because we become very emotionally attached to those things that we create, including children and businesses. And children and businesses are very, very similar, believe it or not. Children and businesses and a good dog, or, or, well, and a bad dog. Just a dog, right? Children, business, and a dog. You become very, very attached to it. You want certain outcomes and you expect certain things. But in those expectations lie the room for you to become disenchanted with whatever the given situation is, right? I'm having a conversation with this person who's talking about shutting this business down and talking about the, $100,000 or so that was invested out of family money, right? Mm-hmm. No money borrowed. This is $100,000 that's going to be just walked away from if you close up shop, shut the doors down, admit defeat and failure and whatever. Mm-hmm. And so this person is projecting forward, feeling all of the pain, the embarrassment, the pain of loss of the money, the words of everyone who said, don't go into business, you can't do it, you'll fail, you'll lose that money. And now here they were all right. They were all exactly right. And so what I did was I stopped this person on this relatively destructive emotional path. And I said, I want you to look up right now. It's like, what? Stop what you're doing and look straight up. What do you see? And they said, the ceiling. Oh, so what you're saying is you have a roof over your head. Yeah? What's the temperature there in the house where you have a roof over your head? I don't know, like 72 degrees. So not too hot, not too cold. That's right. Go to the kitchen. Open the fridge. What do you see? All kinds of stuff. So there's plenty of food. There's a roof over your head. The temperature is manageable. You're out of the rain. You're out of the cold. You're out of the heat. You're out of the elements. There's a great big fridge full of food, a pantry full of food, pots and pans. Everybody's healthy. Nobody's bleeding. Nobody's dying. Nobody's at the hospital or the morgue. Nobody's on the way to the hospital or the morgue. And so what have you got to complain about?
What they say?
I mean, right here, right now. Tomorrow might be a real hard day. Tomorrow you're calling a bankruptcy attorney, right? Mm-hmm. Tomorrow might suck. But guess what? Tomorrow doesn't happen for 15, 16 hours yet. What are you going to do right now? And it was enough to get this person to stop projecting themselves into the future. Because you can only suffer in the future. You can't really suffer in the moment you're in. There are precious few times, right? I remember when I was in the wave runner accident and broke my femur and I'm bobbing up and down in the water, I was suffering in the moment, right? It does happen.
Yes.
But it is wildly infrequent. The overwhelming majority of your suffering comes from remembering lost things of the past or projecting yourself into a future loss in the immediate or even distant future. That's where suffering lives and breathes.
And so don't you think we're bringing that into the present with us, and we have a moment of, I mean, it's unmerited, or it's not warranted to suffer in the present by doing that. So that is an action that's detrimental to your entire timeline.
That's correct. Suffering is almost always a choice. It's almost always a choice. You are in a given situation and you're faced with the opportunity to choose. Do I suffer right here or not? And there are a lot of people who say, yeah, let's suffer a little bit. Okay, that's your choice. I don't agree with the choice. I think it's a bad choice, but it's your choice. Can't take it away from you.
Well, and I think that's a valid point, because happiness is a choice too.
That's right.
And so if happiness is a choice, then obviously suffering would be a choice. And so you can take any of those moments and choose to see the positive outcome of any moment.
That's right.
I think that one of the biggest mistakes that we make is being overcritical of ourselves. We all have that little voice whispering in our ear, talking to us about who we should be and why we should be better at this or dedicate more time to do this. And being overcritical is counterproductive to our progression. You have to discover the best parts of yourself and you have to enjoy them. And if you will focus on the best parts of yourself and the things that make you who you are, and allow for that positive thought to flow, it will allow you to keep moving forward. It will allow you to move in the right direction. And it's okay to set goals. It's okay to plan. It's okay to think about tomorrow. Don't live in tomorrow.
That's right.
Do you agree with that?
I agree with that wholeheartedly. Because if you live in tomorrow for the good or the bad, you're doing yourself a grave disservice, right? I have seen so many people over the years, and I know I could recognize these people over the years who did what I'm about to describe because I used to be one of them. And I was probably the king of them all. I would project myself into a future, and in that future, there was outrageous success and happiness, confidence, money, power, whatever. Anything and everything that would make me whole and complete as a person. And just the very act of essentially daydreaming this amazing future gave me such an overwhelming sense of satisfaction that I never actually had to do any of that stuff, right?
You were living it. You were living it and getting the satisfaction of the accomplishment that hadn't occurred yet.
Oh yeah. I was living it through my own daydream, right? I'm having a daydream about all of the great things that I'm going to accomplish. And I was so satisfied. I found the daydream so satisfying. Oh gosh, it reminds me of Zoolander, the first one, right? Where he's talking about wanting to help. Derek Zoolander's talking about wanting to, help kids that don't read good and other stuff too in the center, right? And it's like the other day I thought about it, and just thinking about it was the most fulfilling experience I've ever had, right?
Yeah.
And I was walking that path, right? Where just thinking about it, just envisioning, imagining, put it on my vision board, write it out, describe my future life. It was so awesome. And it was so satisfying that I didn't have to actually get up the next morning and do it, right? I visualized me with pecs and abs, with lats. I'm built, I'm strong, I'm incredibly powerful. And so when the alarm goes off at 5:45, it's time to go, chug 3 eggs and go for a run a la Rocky. I would just stay in bed because I'm in good enough shape. I feel great. Didn't you see how good I looked in that daydream the other day? I was fantastic. That's what we do. And when I say we, I mean me. I don't do it, thank heaven, I don't do it anymore. But there was a long time in my life where just envisioning that future was so satisfying. I could do it and make it so real in my mind that it was as though I had seen a film about it, or I had been to a theme park that was, my great future life. And I just sat down all satisfied at the end of that day dream and didn't really do anything the next morning or the next morning or the next morning.
Well, I would venture to say that although that sounds amazing, and I'm going to have to ramp up my daydreams a little bit because they aren't nearly to that caliber, I want to explore the other side of this scenario, and that is all of the people that will envision taking action in the future and allow for a daydream of the worst case scenario. And it prevents them from taking a step. And I would venture to say that that's more the norm. And that's why we cling to the comfort and we don't progress, because there are a lot of people out there that go, well, I want to start my own business, and then they proceed to daydream about the failure or the shortcomings and, it wouldn't work because Bob tried to start his own business and it didn't work out for him. So right. How am I better than Tom? It's not going to work out for me or Bob or whoever. I can't even remember the hypothetical name I'm using. But the point is that although your daydream sounds phenomenal, there is a flip side to that scenario where it doesn't happen that way. And then all of a sudden it's a negative thing and you're living in a space of fear and you're afraid to move anywhere because you're so focused on worst case scenario and worst possible outcome that in turn is what you're creating right here, right now.
Right. Yeah. Like the dirty little habit is just called worrying. There's all this negative self-talk and I worry about all of the things that could go wrong. And worrying, I've best heard worrying described as praying for what you don't want.
Right.
And people do it all the time. We pray for what we don't want. And I would make the case that either of those two actions is wrong if we intend to actually accomplish something in this real world, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I go back to a scriptural reference, Psalms. There's a psalm where, and I'm sure you've heard it before, but the key sentence in that is, "Be still and know that I am God." And I think that is incredibly powerful for people. If you can just stop, sit down, shut up, stop thinking about how great it's going to be or how bad it's going to be, stop thinking about how great it was or how bad it was, and just be still in the moment you're in and know that everything is just okay. Your natural state is happiness. And when you project yourself forward and create all these irrational fears against whatever it is you think you want to do, or in my case, create such a grandiose future that you don't actually have to do it because you feel so good.
You've already lived it, and it's been great.
Wow, it was awesome. It's like, it was awesome, dude. It was a novel. You like, it was a book you read one time, right? It was, you're making up stories in your head that didn't actually happen. But boy, if they had, whew, it would have been fantastic. That part where they built the statue in my honor.
Wow.
People got together and pulled clay from the banks of the river and spontaneously built a statue of me.
Oh my. Okay, let's get you out of your daydream and get back to what's going to make people happy.
If there are any armchair therapists out there, just leave that alone. It's all gone now. I don't do that anymore. So just leave it alone. It's okay. I'm all right. But it's a problem.
So I want to play devil's advocate for a minute.
Okay.
Let's say, so think about it this way. Obviously, we don't want to go to the extreme where we don't have to put in the work to fulfill because we're living it via a daydream. But it's still okay to dream. It's okay to have those moments where you can envision what your future would look like if you achieve your goal. And that's okay, because everything that we have today at some point was somebody's dream, idea, or concept. Then they proceeded to put in the work to create what came from that idea or that dream. And so I don't necessarily think that you need the psychiatric help that you think you need on this subject. But I will tell you that I think it's okay to be forward thinking and envision where you want to be. Because if you can't truly envision that and the benefits of it and what's in it for you, you're not going to be inspired to get through the tough parts that you need to get through to make the change. So I think there's a happy medium.
Well, and I would also argue that there's a big difference between dreaming and visualization.
Oh, okay. Talk about that a little bit.
I think the action associated with whatever that visual thing that you're doing is, whether it's a dream or a visualization, because a dream, even a daydream, that results in massive action and persistent action to attain whatever it is that you have dreamed, is now, turns out that wasn't a dream. That was a visualization. That was a vision for the future that you visualize on a regular basis. And then you did get up at 5:45 the next day and go run or whatever it is.
Gotcha.
But the difference between a dream and a visualization is the action you take as that is associated with whatever the envisioning mechanism was. It doesn't become defined until you actually get up and go do something. If you don't get up and go do something, guess what? You were daydreaming, fool. Right?
Right. I agreed. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, that makes sense to me because you have to take action. And you have to find your motivation. You have to establish the reason that you want to get to where you're dreaming about or why you want to get there. People have to focus on the positive result for themselves or they won't make that change. And then a plan is a plan without any action. It's nothing. It's a piece of paper. And you have to be able to make it a process and and do all the things that you need to do to get there. But one of the things you have to do is you have to release expectations and stop comparing yourself to other people. Allow yourself to dream. If I have a whiteboard on my wall and I want to create a new life for myself, I'm going to create what that looks like, whether it's pictures or words or a vision board, or, I'm a big fan of vision boards. I do one every January for the year.
Right.
And then it's so fun at the end of the year to go back and check it off and be like, okay, I brought that in my life. I brought that in my life, but there's action behind it. But being able to envision your future gives you a starting point for right now, today.
Right. I agree with that. It's knowing the destination. You need to put a push pin on the map to know where you want to wind up.
I agree.
I mean, that's step number one. And then you've got to gain perspective. And perspective is pretty easily defined. I actually use this exercise all the time when people ask me about how do I get perspective, right? How do I get perspective on my life or what's going on? And I said, perspective is as simple as this. Imagine you walk into the Mall of America, right? Minneapolis, Minnesota, Mall of America. You walk in. It's the biggest mall in the world. I think they've actually outpaced the Mall of America with some mall in Dubai in recent years. But I've been telling this story for a long time, so just bear with me. You walk into Mall of America, and there's the roller coaster and the stores and the food court and the petting zoo, and there's just like all of this stuff, right, that's in there, or certainly used to be in there. And you walk up to the huge map that shows where everything is and shows where all of your options are of all the things you could possibly go and do and see and experience. Mm-hmm. Okay? There is one little indicator on that map that is the single most important point on the map, bar none, regardless of who you are and regardless of what you think you want to do. Do you know what that one point is?
I sure do. You are here.
You are here. That
Yay!
is correct. Because if you don't know where you're starting from, you don't have a clue what to do to get to anywhere that you want to be. And so you find that you are here, the little red dot that says you are here. And from there, you can map out your life.
I agree.
Ultimately, though, I still go back to the notion that if you apply force, action to whatever it is you want, then you have vision and you are visualizing. And if you don't have a business plan, Chief. You've got a dream journal.
I agree. There has to be action behind it. You have to put something together to reinforce the movement. The biggest thought for me in everything I do is we have this life that we're in right now, and we have the opportunity to achieve. Every morning that you wake up, it's an opportunity for you to start over. You put the past behind you and you move forward with today. And that can be a creation of whatever you want it to be. There are no limits. There are no limitations. So if you could wake up tomorrow morning with a clean slate and realize that there are no limitations to how you design your life, what would you do with it? Would you be great, or would you stay in bed?
And the beauty of that is that either answer to that question is the right answer. You don't have to be great, right? Maybe staying in bed is your calling in life. Maybe you were born to lay down, right?
I'm a natural born sleeper.
I was born to lay down. Yeah, maybe you were, right? And that sounds kind of weak and pathetic, but truth be told, ultimately it comes down to whatever makes you happy and how you define happiness. And you can't really tell anybody what makes them happy, I can't tell you how many people have expressed concern to me that playing tons of video games and watching the same movies 150, 200 times must be just awful for Bo. But I can tell you, he is the most delighted, happy, self-actualized human I've ever met. He absolutely adores his life and every moment of it. And it involves largely video games and DVDs. And so, you have to define happiness for yourself. and then pursue that happiness and pursue that happiness fearlessly. I think so many people look at other people in their life for cues as to what they should find pleasant or enjoyable. They look to other people to help them define what their happiness should be instead of looking within themselves and just saying, hey, what is it? And then that's the most common exercise I'll do with clients all the time. I will take a good, long, hard look at a life and a lifestyle and just say, left to your own devices, your spouse doesn't matter, the client doesn't matter, the boss doesn't matter if you're working for somebody else. What is the one behavior that you find yourself gravitating towards? What's that one thing that you always drift back to? Just left to do whatever you want to do. Nobody's looking, nobody's keeping score. What's the thing you love to do? And when you can find that thing and identify that thing, then you have the access that your whole world will rotate around.
Well, that's about finding your passion. Because if you are not living true to your passion, you will come to a point where you feel trapped. And there are tons of people out there that have put themselves in debt for the big house in the trendy neighborhood or the nice sports car that they're paying way too much for, just to be able to keep up with their friends and just to be able to compete. But what about the guy that's living that life that's completely trapped because he'd rather be on a sailboat in the Mediterranean by himself? He doesn't really want to be with anybody. What happens to the person that feels trapped because he's not living his passion? You got to make a change. You have to go for it. You have to believe in yourself and take that step today.
And yet most people won't. I mean, that's kind of cynical, right? But most people won't. I can remember having clients as I live and breathe over the years, and they would come to me and ask me about, some of the things that I've done that have been arguably successful, right? I trade in currencies and stocks and options, and I will gladly, eagerly tell people exactly what I do and how I do it. And I've had people come to me and say, well, if this works so well, then why do you tell everybody exactly what you're doing? If you have something that works so well, it seems like you would keep that to yourself. And the answer is simple. Because 99% of the people that I tell exactly how to succeed will not do the work. They just won't do it. And so I'm not creating any competition for myself on a given endeavor. Most people just won't do it. And the people who will do it, that small percentage of people who will actually take action and go out there and make something happen, those people tend to become business partners, and we make money together, or we succeed together, or we find happiness together, as opposed to the people who will just, thumb through the latest self-help manual and say, whoo, I feel like I've done all those things. People are daydreaming. They put the book down, or they put the program down, or shut off the CD player or the MP3 or whatever it is. The time doesn't matter. The medium of that information being delivered doesn't matter. It's been going on for years. And they will feel so good about that book that they've just listened to that they won't need to take any action to make their own lives better. That's the sad truth of it.
And that's living in a space that I don't know that we can help those people as much as we could help the people that want to be.
Well, that's the point, right? But 99 out of 100 people will not do thing one to advance their cause. They will feel so good after reading the book, after listening to the MP3, they feel all uplifted, or they've seen the video and they feel moved and motivated, but they're making the same mistake that I made years ago, which was I project myself into this incredibly successful and warm and wonderful future to the point that I don't actually have to get up the next morning and go run or go work or do whatever it is. I don't have to take action. I put that book down and I feel like I've taken action. I feel good about me, and I've got a choice. Do I work and make that a reality, or do I wait for the next book to come out and I read that and that buys me another couple of months? Most people, 99 out of 100, they just wait for the next book to come out. They get their little boost of feel good, and then they're searching for another book, another program, another leader, master, guru, whatever. I'm looking for that one person out of 100, because that one person out of 100 is still a whole lot of people.
That's true.
It's still enough people to make a significant change in the way things work.
Well, I would venture to say that more people would take action if they could first identify what they want. I mean, and I get it. I've seen the statistics. I know that 1 out of 100 takes action. But they take action because they ultimately know what they want, and they're working towards the goal that they've already established in their mind. Because you can read self-help books all day, every day. You can listen to our podcast. You can listen to, whatever you want to listen to, attend any seminars. But if you don't know what you want, all you're doing is reacting to the lift that those motivational things give you. And it's a reaction, and reactions are not sustainable. You have to be productive.
That's right. You have to take action. You are living in this body inside this three-dimensional reality, and you can move this body around. You can do things with it, right? Mm-hmm. You can create things in your mind that you then manifest with your body. I joke with the kids all the time about how I can open and shut doors or change the television or clean the house with my mind powers. And they're like, well, how do you possibly do that? It's like, well, first of all, I think I want those dishes done. And then I say, hey, Gator, do those dishes. And then you get up and walk over there and do them. And I sit here on the couch, and purely with the power of my mind, those dishes get washed, dried, and put away. Not to mention, when you're not around and I need to open or shut a door, or I need to do some laundry, or I need to clean the house, or I need to make dinner, I think about it with the power of my mind, and my mind commands my body, and my body gets up. My body walks over and it starts cooking dinner. It opens and shuts doors. It folds laundry. It does all kinds of things. The power of my mind, I can just command my body to float through the environment and get things done.
What?
Yes.
My biggest lesson in that is that I should have had kids. Dang it.
Little mind control slaves. They're awesome. They're also expensive and incredibly frustrating. But, you take the good with the bad.
Oh, that's too funny. Well, I think we're coming close on time.
Yes, we are.
So, final thoughts?
Take action. Visualize that which you want. Create it in your mind. Write it down on a piece of paper so that you can remember exactly what you've created. Make sure that that piece of paper is a business plan for your life and not a dream journal of things you wish you could or could not, would or would not, good or bad, do. And then 5:45, 5:30 tomorrow morning, set an alarm. Get up. Start doing your list. Watch the sunrise. Check off those little boxes. There's a reason why the methodology works so successfully for so many people. How many people, you ask? 1 out of 100, maybe? Be the 1 out of 100. That's my advice. Be the one. Be the one. You start today and then you do it tomorrow. Persist. Endure. Because you will look up 365 back-to-back-to-back days where you got up at 5:30, 5:45 and got your crap done, and you will be amazed what you've gotten done.
I agree with that. I think one other thing that I want to add is make sure when you're writing out your list, focus on how it will make you feel. You have to be able to understand the payoff for you and how it will make you feel when you achieve those goals, and focus on that just as much as the action.
I agree with that. You're absolutely right. You've got to have the why embedded into the goal. You've got to understand why you're doing this and what the upside is. All right, well, we probably should wrap it up then. Not as many laughs this time. Wow, we were all serious. This was serious
we were very serious tonight. Seriously.
I'm serious. I'm so serious.
Serious.
I'm serious right now.
Okay. Okay, now we've just been talking too long.
Yeah, no doubt. It's getting goofy.
All right.
Well, as always, thanks for being a part of the conversation. It really, truly means a lot to us. It makes us feel like we're making a difference for the better in our lives as we engage with you on this level. So, in all seriousness, dream your life.
And live your dreams.
Till next time.
Bye-bye.